Hi, I'm Kevin Jones, CEO of Ectobox. I have the pleasure of introducing the speakers for today's uh, breakout session. And I'll start with a brief introduction of who we are as a company, talk a little bit about the smart manufacturing cluster, just for a couple comments, and then I'll get into a great introduction of this topic and our speakers. As a company, we are an industrial intelligence solutions company. And we typically work with manufacturing companies that are in the Northeast Ohio area. And our focus is to help companies operate more efficiently and grow. Typically, when we're talking with companies, we are talking about issues around unplanned downtime, companies trying to find and eliminate inefficiencies in their companies, running machines to failure, on-time delivery challenges, production, manual systems, etc. And so we apply uh, products and solutions to those situations to drive downtime, increase efficiencies, and in the end, increase production and revenue and profit. With that said, we connect, in doing that, we connect to old and new machines alike, directly tackle specific business challenges to do that, provide visibility to the plant floor, and also do a lot of consulting around ISA 95 and digital transformations. With that said, the smart manufacturing cluster has been a big help to us. We got into the smart manufacturing cluster because it promised to be a place where we could connect with other service providers like ourselves, technical providers, and also manufacturers. And the smart manufacturing cluster has come through on that promise, and we've enjoyed meeting everybody and have gotten a lot of value out of all the work that we've done and the people we've met through the smart manufacturing cluster. We're continuing our support to the smart manufacturing cluster because they have the right focus, which is to help manufacturers in the Northeast Ohio area grow and to help the economy overall for everybody. The breakout session today is Manufacturing Your Cybersecurity. It'll be presented by Jess Walpole at Lincoln Electric and Christopher Prewitt at MCPc. For us, this is a really exciting and valuable topic because this is what we deal with day in and day out. Industry 4.0, data-driven manufacturing, and all the capabilities and technologies that are applied to manufacturers to help them increase their efficiencies and improve production. It all focuses on data. It's that data that needs to be protected and secured because without that, the lifeblood of manufacturing, then companies are at a significant risk. So for this conversation around manufacturing and cybersecurity, it's a really important conversation. And so it makes sense to bring these two people to the plate for the conversation. For our speakers, Jess works at Lincoln Electric, a well-known landmark company in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. She has many years of experience, about 25 years of experience in IT and security for enterprise level companies. And she has a proven track record for success in IT and cybersecurity at every position she's held. Christopher was a security principal at MCPc, a well known firm for their laser focus on data protection. Like Jess, he has a lot of years of experience in IT security, which spans across many industries and roles, including chief information security officers at enterprise organizations. And as one of his team members said about him recently, he knows his stuff. So with all that said, you are, it's true, it's in LinkedIn, so it's true. With all that said, you are in very good hands for this topic. So Chris, Jess, the floor is yours.
Yeah, appreciate the introduction and the kind words. Pleasure to be here. Excited. Jess is a dear friend of mine, so it's always great given an opportunity to be able to talk with her about security and about the things that we care about and are passionate about. So. Quickly, just wanted to run through the agenda. Going to introduce kind of the topic of Industry 4.0. I don't think there's anything that we need necessarily to dig into. I think that's why we're all here to discuss the meaning and impact of digitization on shop floors and in the manufacturing space. We will talk about how companies grapple with it, both operationally and from a tactical and technical perspective, and governance. Jess leads Lincoln Electric, their cybersecurity program, and deals with a lot of this day in and day out. And with that, Jess, do you want to add anything else to your intro?
I think Kevin did a nice enough job, so we can move on.
Agreed. So, you know, a little background. Jess and I worked together at Lincoln Electric for a number of years. She was kind of paramount in helping guide my career and in teaching me about governance. So, but IT and OT. So I've spent the majority of my career, I've been in IT and IT security in the Cleveland area for 25 years. And I would say the bulk of that in IT security, and from an industry perspective, primarily in the manufacturing sector. I've worked for lighting manufacturers, lawnmower manufacturers, welding manufacturers at Lincoln Electric. And I've done a lot of consulting and small, medium business over the years as well. IT and OT are often at odds within companies, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But you know, the promise of IT in manufacturing is incredible. Being able to identify issues before they occur, getting great value out of data, being able to make better decisions, improve efficiencies, automation. You know, just in time, being able to, you know, get parts where they're needed on production lines, being able to swap out production lines and get new products built quicker. So, you know, there is all of this promise, and there have been for, you know, a number of years, and a lot of manufacturers continue to invest in this area. Now, and Jess has firsthand experience with this. IT and OT often are at odds within manufacturing. IT is a large bureaucratic engine. It has been around for a long time. They have change management. They have their processes. They have their meetings. They have their reports. They have all of their processes. And OT is largely agile in nature. Hey, we need to go do this thing. We're going to go buy these things and put this together because we've got a new production line. We've got dates that we need to hit to get product out of our door. So availability is incredibly important for OT, and not that it's not for IT, but IT also has this very big monolithic privacy weight to it, and certainly confidentiality, data protection, security, and all of these mechanisms that have kind of slowed down IT over the years.
Yeah, I would agree, Chris. I mean, I think that there is definitely a very large difference between the way IT, OT, and I would even add engineering technology falls in line with this. We're definitely seeing a convergence between those three, and there's touch points on that. And there's things that we can learn from each other that I think is just outstanding. It's very exciting to be able to start having conversations with both the operational technology teams and manufacturing who want to digitize their shop floors and are starting to recognize the world of access databases may not be the best way to go, and that there may be need to have more commercially viable solutions on the shop floor to help them to do the things that they do. It's pressing to get more and more engagement with the IT organization because they want to do what they do, which is manufacture amazing products. And they want the IT organization to just make sure that they're stable and they're reliable and that they can support them at a moment's notice, right? Anticipating needs, I think, is the most important thing on that standpoint. Engineering is the same situation. Our engineering teams are now pushing the envelope while wanting to get more and more engaged in technologies that are more cloud oriented. Why? Because they want to start providing industrial oriented solutions to our customers. And so it's definitely this very interesting supply chain kind of aspect that we're all looking at. And the IT organization is having to be very flexible in how we help to support and change our mindset as to how we work together.
Yeah, cloud itself has been a game changer, as you know, not just for IT, but OT as well. It's really, you know, enabled from a product perspective and, you know, being able to, you know, have real-time data and be able to spin up infrastructure in the cloud to be able to access that data for customers, you know. From a business enablement perspective, you know, instead of selling product, now you may have the ability to sell service and data. I remember a story years ago about a company who sold air conditioning units to buildings, and here's this big product, and you need to buy this thing and install it. Well, with IoT, there's this capability of potentially being able to sell cold air, right? So preventive maintenance and all of this other. So it really is this business enablement that is exploding in all of manufacturing, and everybody's trying to figure out how to monetize it. But still internally, you have this convergence issues. You've got these 2 different departments, or 3 or 4 different departments who are trying to get things done in different ways. And if you ask the OT folks, hey, what are you doing about security? Oh, well, IT's got that handled. They've got a firewall. Meanwhile, you've got IT who's trying to take their their endpoint protection or their network-based protection and retrofit it inside OT devices that may not work. Siemens and Rockwell and a lot of different PLC manufacturers have built their product, but it's essentially a black box that you can't just go install or monitor very easily.
Yeah, it's definitely the environment is shifting. We're seeing more and more that companies are evaluating how and when they need to get IT involved. And so I think what's exciting about that is that the operational technology teams, because of the fact that there's requirement of having more collaboration between the two, are starting to get the IT organization engaged sooner in the life cycle chain. And that helps, right? Understanding what the roadmaps are that they're trying to drive towards can help us make the right types of decisions. Clearly, as we're looking at these age technologies, to your point, we're not going to go through and replace a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment because of the fact that it doesn't have the latest operating system solution in place, or because we now have to figure out how we can provide an opportunity of managing that multi-million dollar piece of equipment. We have to think about it as to how we can protect it and mitigate the risk associated with it to make sure that we don't introduce business continuity issues, environmental health and safety kind of issues, and for that matter, other types of intellectual property concerns associated with it. So being able to understand those different areas is definitely critical. It also means that we have to be smart about how we have the right kinds of conversations, even from a legal perspective, because we may be getting into NIST compliance types of concerns and how we're manufacturing our product and what are the things that we need to be thinking about on that front as well.
Yeah, you'd mentioned it. A lot of this is relationship building, being able to, work with those different teams, trying to get everybody to pull the rope in the same direction. And, from IT's perspective, being able to understand you can't just upgrade things. You can't just take what you've done in IT and layer that on top of your shop floors. You may, the operations folks maybe bought a press 10 years ago, and that press has a life cycle of 20 years, but it came with a Windows XP computer. And what are we going to do? How are we going to upgrade it? Well, we can't, because the company that sold us the press either isn't in business, or they have new machines, but they also have new presses. So it is very much a collaborative effort. Are there compensating controls that can be put in place? But certainly security has become a bigger and bigger issue. And I don't want to bring up Stuxnet. That is one that everybody's painfully aware of from an IoT perspective. But there are plenty of companies that have experienced some breach, and it may not be as nation state or as interesting as the malware for Stuxnet. But there are plenty of examples where you've got this Windows XP computer or older sitting on a shop floor that's unprotected because your antivirus software endpoint vendor doesn't support that anymore. So there's this system, unpatched, unprotected, unmonitored, sitting in the corner in your flat network and provides a risk opportunity for your organization.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that's where the conversation starts to shift, right? Having the right relationship with the manufacturing teams and your business leaders to be able to start talking about those exact types of issues and What are we going to do? It may be as simple as, evaluating air gapping, and it doesn't answer everything, but it's a starting point. It may be another conversation around, well, it is time for us to start looking at segmenting the network so that we can protect the assets in the right types of situations. And there's also a matter of looking at to say, what is the roadmap for the replacement of this type of equipment? Can it be replaced? Are there things that we could look at to virtualize? Can we provide other types of opportunities to help protect this asset that's so valuable to the organization, but still make sure that it's got the right types of protections in place to reduce the risk associated as well?
Yeah, and again, how do these occur? How do you get to those decision points are through relationships, through conversations. And quite often in my experience, there is this great divide in companies where IT really doesn't understand business risk. They may not even understand where all of the really important data is, or where are all the really important systems at. The world has become incredibly complex over the last 10 plus years, where you could look back and say, well, 100% of your data used to reside in your data center and 80% of your compute were within your walls, maybe some laptops, maybe some phones. Well, now you have data everywhere, right? And that IT not understanding business risk also cuts the other way. Business people really don't understand IT risk. Well, I'm sure IT's got it handled. And there's this level of comfort that IT is doing these things, but the world today is largely different from the world 2 years ago, and definitely from the world 5 or 10 years ago. Cybersecurity attacks are occurring at an unprecedented rate. I am one of the team members on our incident response team for MCPc, and I am quote unquote flown out to work on security incidents and help get businesses back up. It's occurring at an alarming rate, and it's very invasive. From a relationship perspective, you need to have great relationships to be able to have good security foundation throughout your organization.
And it has to be relevant too. Understanding the data elements is critical. Knowing what kind of data is being transmitted internally, but also externally to the organization, has to be the driving component. There's not a regulation out there that doesn't require you to have an understanding of the data mapping associated with whether it's privacy oriented, whether it's SOX compliance oriented, whether it's NIST compliance, industrial controls, any of those types of areas. And that's very common. Like, that's the benefit of working with manufacturing engineers and working with engineers just in general. They enjoy getting into those nitty gritty aspects of understanding the data, right? So being able to speak that language and understand how to relate it appropriately so that you can then explain why it's important to understand what data is going outside of our four walls, what kind of data is staying inside, allows us to start thinking about different types of avenues of protection. And what I generally find is they're eager to have that type of a dialogue, because at the end of the day, they want to have the sustainability associated with their environment. They also want to support our customers, right? So if we're having the right discussions and they understand that our customers have certain expectations because they're either in this particular geography or they're in this particular type of industry, then it gives us the opportunity to have different types of discussions on that front as well. And there may be even areas that we have to get outside parties to assist us in those aspects. And a perfect example of that is NIST. When you look at NIST compliance, and there's so much changing in that environment today, a year ago, we would all been sitting here talking about the fact that that's a 2025 initiative, right? I would have been saying that. But when you start having the dialogue, like, no, now it's a November initiative. We really have to have a level of an assessment done so that we know where we are from a compliance standpoint just with NIST. And that impacts any of us that are doing DFARS, ITAR, or other types of government agencies' perspectives, whether you're a direct or whether you're also a subcontractor in that area. In a lot of cases, it's best to get some outside counsel and support activities associated with that.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think over the years, I've seen IT security departments who are largely technical or engineers by nature, getting into business risk discussions, policy discussions, compliance, legal, regulatory. Myself and you over our careers have been asked to, weigh in on things that, may have legal implications. And I'm no compliance expert, but it's at least early in my career, it's something that I've kind of had to pick up and learn. And what are these controls, and what meets a control requirement and what doesn't. A lot of organizations really struggle with the ability or know-how of, are we secure or aren't we, when it comes to compliance. And manufacturing is largely unregulated, banking, insurance, and plenty of other industries, HIPAA with healthcare. And outside of manufacturing organizations that do work with the Department of Defense or the US government, may not be required to do much in the way of security. And maybe they've been able to let that slide. But now it's, it went from NIST 800, 171, DFARS, where you can self-assess. You can run down the control summary yourself and determine, am I compliant or aren't I? And if you're big enough of a target or you do enough business with the government, maybe you're going to be asked, for an audit or a review. CMMC is requiring third-party audit, and the auditor can't just be any old auditor. They must be themselves certified to provide CMMC audits. So it's very interesting on kind of the growth of this. There is plenty of overlap, but the continued maturity in the requirement in this area, I think, is a good thing. But I think a lot of companies, a lot of organizations are not necessarily prepared for it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that even you have to take that into consideration as you start looking at acquisition strategies as well. Because as you're buying companies, especially if it's part of your, core market and it's something that you're trying to get more into in some cases too, you have to think about those pieces as you're doing that evaluation and take that into consideration as, is this a business I want to be in? I mean, that's the conversation a lot of companies are having now is, do I want to have to be this heavily regulated and be in this type of an environment too? And I think what's interesting is in most organizations where you have a good security program already in place, you probably have 80% of this already addressed. It's a matter of really fine-tuning what's important, understanding what you're doing with these customers, understanding the aspect associated with what kind of data you're actually housing and supporting, and then being able to address it appropriately as well.
Yeah, I think more and more organizations that are mature in the M&A space, have brought IT in a little bit earlier, rather than at the end, hey, we bought this company, now go connect everything. That's typically what I've seen through most of my career. Now, because of IT risks and compliance and a lot of other requirements, IT is, on the forefront. Licenses, hardware, infrastructure, assets, websites, there's a more profound review of what are they really buying? How is this other company managing risk, and what does that mean for us? So when it comes to managing risk from a governance perspective, we had talked about being able to kind of create relationships outside of IT. Certainly we're all in this together, as an organization, your product engineering teams, your OT and IoT folks, everyone, we all work for the same company, but how are you being able to kind of bridge the divide, managing people, process, and technology, and kind of bring those groups together? How are you and how is Lincoln doing that?
It's a lot of conversations, right? I mean, when I first started at Lincoln, that was probably the biggest hurdle of going in any company is you have to get as close as you can to the business leaders and understand what's important to the business. And based off of that, then you can figure out what the right protection is you have to put in place, what the security aspect of it is. I didn't start out my career as a security professional. I started my career out as a business professional. And I think getting that understanding of how businesses work and going in that aspect helps to bridge that gap with that conversation of just understanding what's important to our business. And then based off of that, you can clearly start looking to say, what is the most important things that I need to be investing in from a security standpoint? And how do I make the architecture flexible enough to support that initiative, right? A lot of times, to your point, the IT organization will make things very confined, right? There's a big difference between how you structure things internally from an on-premise solution base versus a cloud base. And then when you start bringing in IoT-ish types of solutions that bridges the gap between the two of those, or cloud-based solutions that have some sort of hybrid approach, we have to figure out how to continue to show that we're going to say yes to that and how we're going to make it work. At the end of the day, that's just what has to happen. We have to figure out how to enable it as best we can and reduce the risk.
Yeah, you know, you and I've talked about this quite a few times. The IT security department at most companies is often seen as the department of no. And really, it's how do we say yes securely? Yep. And that's what it needs to be. You know, security needs to be supportive of business enablement, you know, driving value inside the business. And, you know, that kind of attitude certainly helps with the relationships and getting things done. From an architectural perspective, historically, you may have had, you know, product engineers, shop floor, OT people, you know, hey, we're going to go buy our own workstations. We're going to buy our own switches. We're going to buy these from Rockwell and Siemens and a dozen other different companies. In change management, both sides of the aisle step all over each other, right? You know, IT is going to, you know, take a network outage and it impacts production lines all over the world. How are you kind of coordinating across those domains and boundaries, change management, security, architecture? You know, it seems like a very tall task to be able to get everybody under the same tent and speaking the same language and understanding the impacts.
Yeah, and it really comes down to making sure that our IT and security professionals are invested in our business. And when I say that, it means they recognize the fact that, hey, here's a server, and I know what's on it, and I know the impact it's going to have to the business when I'm doing something to it. And I don't think we always look at it that way. You know, historically, infrastructure people look at it and say, I'm protecting servers, I'm protecting networks. Systems development people generally look at it and say, this is the application and I don't want anything happening to it, right? And then when you get into manufacturing, they're doing all kinds of things, right? They've got a little bit more access. They can go through, and in some cases, they may be installing a router in some cases, or it could be something very, very innocent. They're putting in something cellular because they're trying to get around the aspect of IT, right? I don't want to have that conversation. I find that if we're willing to meet on a regular basis, we get the right types of people in the room, we start creating lists of understanding of where the issues are that we need to address, and programmatically start putting things in place to enable it, it's hugely impactful. Going through and being able to recognize that a big component of the manufacturing shop floor's concerns were around the sustainability of the equipment and the fact that patching was problematic, right? Looking at how you can put in VDI and iGel types of technology on that shop floor so it removes that constraint from them. And they know they're going to have a standard image that's very easily maintained back into the data center so they don't have concerns about it. It takes the conversation off the table, and they have confidence in it because they now know it works. And then they start driving, I want more of that. And the more of those conversations that happen, I get pretty engaged and excited about the fact that that's changing. Now, on the change management side, we still have some impacts that we have to think about. So then you have to go through and make sure you have the right types of conversations so they know these changes are occurring, and make sure that we're working through it. And there will be a gotcha through it. There will be a moment where we miss something. But if we react quickly to it and we can help to resolve the issue as it is occurring, we will gain that confidence to support it. On the same token, when they make a change management, in their environment, we can't be, aha, once again, you did something wrong. It's got to be a situation that we have to figure out how to quickly resolve the issue, make it work, and get it in place.
It really is. I think, at the 50,000 foot view, one of the takeaways I think for people is, security is just not firewalls and antivirus. It really is. It's not even a project. It's a program. It is business wide. It is wide. It is deep. Touches all aspects, and it's really important not to stick your head in the sand and say, well, the shop floor is a different thing, and we need to build products. It really is about trying to work together to reduce risk. And with that, Lincoln Electric, great company, been around for 120 some years. They've been building welders with circuit boards and software on them for a long time. So kind of IoT devices with Bluetooth and Ethernet and wireless and cellular capabilities. How have you kind of helped bridge that divide, with product engineering? Because I know, a lot of those folks, and this is very typical, they're going to be electrical engineers, they're going to be welding engineers, or other types of engineers. They aren't necessarily software developers. They aren't IT people. They aren't thinking like IT people. How are you trying to, instill culture and improve things at a tactical level in the product security space?
We're very fortunate. We have a great engineering team who recognizes that as we are building into the software development, we've always, as you said, we've always had some level of software development, but now we're looking at IoT software development, and we're looking at mobile software development, and we're looking at other types of solutions. And we recognize the fact that it is something that we have to think about from a security perspective, because these are going into the customer sites, and they are doing things on their shop floors, and they are pulling some information. Mostly it's metrics, right? So it doesn't have a huge amount of risk associated with it, which is why as security professionals, we have to not, get overly excited about it. But we do have to make sure that they understand as we're starting to, get larger in the space, or we have larger items that we want to include, and that would be related to more of the supply chain demand cycle, that has implications associated with it. And so having those conversations, enabling people to see outside third-party opinions in some cases, bringing that knowledge set, whether it's from the FBI or local security professionals, or even some, just regular agencies that help you out, the Gartners, McKinseys, and those types of folks. It's definitely helpful to start having these types of dialogues, educating folks, and then really talking about what the risk profile could potentially be associated with it. And if there is none, you acknowledge there is none, and you just try to make sure you have good operational metrics associated with it. And that's also changing too. We're seeing that monitoring controls that the IT organization just naturally enables around our environment to protect the applications of our organizations to keep our lifeblood, we can put those same principles into our product cycles. And so the support structures that you may need to have, the things that we're thinking about is how you support the customer in those steps implications. They are appreciating the fact that we're willing to bring that type of a dialogue to the table, and that we can, in essence, also get some benefit from them related to more of the agile type of approach, because your IT professionals, to your point, generally still are thinking about the old waterfall methodologies, whereas engineers are extremely agile in their development cycle. And so it pushes our boundaries to kind of look more on that front. And it also makes us start thinking about what are the things that we should really be focusing on. So even inside of our organization, we're making decisions about, what do we really want our IT professionals to be doing? Should they be focusing so much on the back end corporate support aspects of things? Or should we be trying to outsource some of that activity, and enables us to be more in line with what our real operational, revenue generation types of activities could be for the organization?
Yeah, well said. And the just a little background. What you see here, the list is from the Open Web Application Security Project, OWASP, and these are the top 10 security issues for IoT devices. Every couple of years, this list is reviewed, updated based on attacks and some other telemetry from the internet over time. And on the weak and guessable passwords, I just wanted to take a minute or two, tell a story. After my time at Lincoln Electric, I presented to a number of people in the shipbuilder industry within manufacturing. So it was an interesting conference, but I, of course, was there to talk about IT security. And I remember running across this story, and I thought it was kind of fitting to tell today. So there was a GPS manufacturer who developed a product, and it worked over satellite or cellular networks, and provided kind kind of GPS coordinates, but it had an IoT mechanism. So this was on a network and could provide telemetry, GPS coordinates, and other things. So, and these were largely installed on ships. Well, the company that made it had a default username of admin and I believe password, or no, it was admin and 1234. Well, an enterprising hacker figured this out and was able to scan the internet for these types of devices, log in with default credentials, and what you see on the left, they created an application called Ship Tracker. And at the peak, they were able to identify and monitor the location of about 90,000 ships across the globe who were using default credentials on their GPS devices. Now, from a product security perspective, in this ecosystem, who is responsible for security here? Is it the company that manufactured the device and gave it the default credentials and maybe didn't force someone to change them? Or the fact that they are standard device to the device to device? What about the integrator, the company that installed it on the ship? What about the ship manufacturer that sold that ship with the GPS device to a private company who was, moving product around the globe throughout the world? So where does the responsibility lie? And it really is with all of us in all that we're doing. It is in everyone's daily lives. We're all impacted by this. And whether you're in finance, accounting, product engineering, on the manufacturing floor, in IT, wherever, we're all impacted by this. And really, it does take a village. The IT department at companies, especially manufacturers, are often small. They can't protect everything themselves. They really need everyone pulling the rope in the same direction. And with that, from a best practices perspective, I think we'll touch on a couple of these and then take some questions. Asset inventory, access controls are things that are largely immature from a process and function perspective at companies. They often don't know what are all the assets that we have? What are all the applications? What are all the systems? What are all the IoT devices? And then who has access to those things? Certainly in the kind of realm of ransomware, vulnerability management, backup and recovery, incredibly important. Being able to recover systems, test that recovery process throughout the year, and being able to remove security bugs and patch your systems, mitigate, remediate them over time, critical. Log review and analysis is something that it's a little more mature of a process. And, from an OT perspective, there's a lot of data collection, a lot of data creation, but oftentimes security monitoring of those environments doesn't always happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you're speaking motherhood and apple pie here, right? I mean, you got to make sure that you're looking at all these aspects. And at the end of the day, you get into that's what the IT organization is focusing on. But I think then we have to start thinking about what the IoT piece is really looking at. And between these two, they have to figure out how to work together. And, you've already put the point out there that the OT organization truly believes that they want the IT department to handle the aspects of security. And I agree with that. I think what we're finding, though, is it's starting to converge. I think that we're starting to realize that we all recognize that we have to do that. As we're looking at these aspects about does it really matter? Yeah, it does matter, because the fact if someone does hack into our environment, what can they get to? And I think the more that we understand the implications associated with it, the better off that we're going to be across the entire, organization about the risk management associated with it. And I know I hear on a pretty regular basis about, hey, I want to put a new piece of solution out here in my manufacturing shop floor, and it's not going to be connected to the internet. But my first question is, why shouldn't it be? Because there's got to be some valid data that you're going to need off of that. Otherwise, why are we doing it? And then what can we really be gleaning from that? And so the reality is we have to figure out how to protect all these items.
We do, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and oftentimes that may be that Windows XP computer that's sitting out on your shop floor, not protected, no compensating controls, no network firewall, nothing. So build those relationships, work on security together, and it is a journey. So with that, Jess, I appreciate the time, the conversation. I'm going to stop sharing, and I think we may have some questions.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All right. So Jess, we have one for you.
Nope.
It won't hurt. How much do you rely on outside services to assist in the continuous improvement and long-term care and feeding of Lincoln Electric's cybersecurity system?
Where it's appropriate. So, I mean, I clearly am not going to be able to hire a large group inside my organization to focus on cybersecurity, but that doesn't mean I don't have cybersecurity professionals. I have, a small team inside of our organization that focuses on IT security and cybersecurity specifically, and we have put the right types of things in place, relying on security professional organizations, managed security professional organizations, to make sure that that's aligned to support a 24/7 operation. I can't afford to have 24/7 operations inside of my teams. But I think that there is also the aspect of making sure that my teams know where to start and where to end. So, for example, forensics, I have a certain level of expertise internally to help out with forensics and our legal coordination aspects. But when it comes down to the real need, we will go outside and have a retainer with a specific organization to support those avenues. And I think that that is across the portfolio, whether it's IT security or it's IT in general. Application security is a perfect example of that. I'm not going to hire the amount of application security professionals that I would need to support our product, but I can definitely find those outside and use the right type of support mechanism.
Thank you. Good. Chris, got one for you. What steps is MCPc taking to expand its services to provide assistance to manufacturers that have need for the CMMC compliance?
Well, we are going through the process now to become certified to be able to audit CMMC. We've got a number of security professionals that perform assessments, whether that's ISO related, NIST 853, NIST 800-171, or the variety of cybersecurity frameworks. So we're very, very interested in being able to support the manufacturing community with CMMC. We've got a number of clients that are required to do it. And I think it's a natural extension of our business. We've grown our consulting capability in that area, and CMMC is going to be important not just to us, but certainly to many of our customers.
All right. And let's see, Jess, one more for you. You've already told us a lot about what you do to what's required in building Lincoln Electric security to address cloud, IoT, and third-party technologies. But what can you tell us, or can you tell us a little bit more about how you also touch on the ways you address the challenges associated with legacy equipment?
Legacy equipment and what I love to call technological debt, right? That's a new buzzword. It is a challenge. And I think that we continue to look at ways that we can retire it where it's appropriate, and work with our business units to identify that. But as we mentioned previously, we're not going to be in a state that you can justify replacing a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment due to the fact that it has an old operating system, or the fact that it's still on an XP box, which is alarming. But what we can do is make sure that as we are working through bringing new technologies in, we're evaluating them for those reasons and ensuring that they are going to be able to be supportable, not just in the short term, but in the long term. And I think that's a major shift. A lot of industrial manufacturers still aren't looking at it from that perspective. They're looking at it as we're trying to make sure that it's performant, not necessarily that it's going to stay secure. And that is to the point of looking at more of it is going to take a village. We are going to have to work together to make sure that we're educating our vendors, that we're pushing for those types of components. In my mind, that's the reason why we're seeing things like this coming into play from a DoD perspective. It's starting to change the culture of the company. It'll be interesting to see how this becomes more of the Homeland Security critical protection expectations as well.